sir.
Great. Well, good morning, Chairman Martin. Vice Chair Edwards, I do not see, but, oh, there you are. How are you? Nice to see you, members of council. I am Bob Harvey. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership. As you know, the Greater Houston Partnership is the principal business organization in Houston. We have about just over 1,000 member companies that together employ about 1/5 of the workers in the Greater Houston region. So thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'd be happy to answer questions as your time permits after I'm through. First, let me say on behalf of the partnership how grateful we are for the absolutely critical service that the Houston Fire Department and specifically the members of the Houston Professional Firefighters Association provide to all Houstonians. From routine calls to extraordinary events like Hurricane Harvey, Houston's professional firefighters come to our aid every day, and we're extremely grateful for that. Now, when we learned that the Firefighters Association had collected enough signatures to validate a petition on pay parity, we at the partnership took serious notice. We know that we will be unable to attract jobs and investment to Houston, and that the region will not prosper and be a place of opportunity for all Houstonians if the city of Houston is not on a firm financial footing. That means a balanced budget, a strong balance sheet and credit rating, and an ability to provide adequate and timely city services. As you will recall, over the course of 4 years, from 2014 through last year, the partnership worked diligently to understand the city's pension system in the context of the overall city budget. We knew we needed a long-term pension solution in order to protect employees, put the city on a firm financial footing, and ultimately to improve and protect city services. After careful study, we developed principles for a comprehensive pension solution that were incorporated into the final reform package that we worked with Mayor Turner, with members of council, and with the state legislature to pass pension reform. So let's just say that the partnership takes issues of compensation and benefits for city employees very seriously. So the partnership, while the partnership has not taken a formal position, I'm here this morning to express our concern regarding the pay parity proposal. If pay parity is placed on the ballot in November, we will no doubt study the issue in greater depth and take a formal position. We've already indicated to the union our desire to meet and to hear their arguments. I'm certainly not here to take a position on the adequacy of the firefighter compensation or the merits of the current collective bargaining agreement or lack thereof. I'm here to simply express 3 concerns about the pay parity proposal. First, the cost of pay parity between fire and police, as defined by the petition, which some reports have placed as high as $98 million per year, could have and likely would have a substantial impact on the city budget, necessitating budget and service cuts within the general fund budget, just as pension costs were beginning to do prior to reform. I'm also concerned that the increase in firefighter pay envisioned in the pay parity proposal would have the effect of raising the cap on the pension corridor mechanism that we fought so hard to put in place. The corridor functions as a percentage of pay, so increases in pay increase the absolute, though not percentage, level of that cap. So we intend to review the analysis presented this morning by the finance director and any estimates prepared by the firefighters or others. But surely we would agree that budgetary impacts approaching $100 million per year would put a severe strain on the city and warrant scrutiny. Second, we question the principle of linking compensation between 2 distinct city departments with unique roles, work schedules, training requirements, organizational structures, etc., each of which operate under separate collective bargaining agreements. We have questions regarding how pay parity would work or could work in practice, given the separate collective bargaining agreements for police and fire and the many differences between the departments. And the third concern, we are concerned at the suggestion that Houston voters would be asked to hardwire compensation arrangements for city employees. Shouldn't we look to collective bargaining between the administration and the unions, operating within a fiscal environment established by City Council through the annual budget process to set compensation and other terms of employment? Now, we acknowledge that the City and Firefighters Association have had difficulty in reaching a new collective bargaining agreement. We know that this is a difficult process that can only be addressed through a deliberative process again, between the administration and the union. We would urge the city and the firefighters to work together to address these challenges in good faith. So I thank the committee for holding this meeting this morning and the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you for your time. Mr. Chairman, I'll be available for any questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Harvey. And first of all, thank you for coming this morning. We appreciate your role and the partnership's role in this whole situation that we're dealing with. I think it's important to understand the business community's decisions and the impact of the decisions we make on the business community as well. As you will notice, there was a new queue started. I kept the names of those folks in order for the director and the chief, and we'll go back to those. Those were Edward Stardig, Travis Boykins, and Kubash. A new queue for Mr. Harvey has started, and we'll start with Council Member Dwight Boykins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bob, thank you for coming in, and we all know you have a very tough schedule, and don't envy you because everybody pulls on you. Good to see you. Thank you for your support of the Verizon contract that the mayor brought in. And I too want to thank you also for your support of the pension. That was a tough pension reform early on, tough situation, getting everybody on board. And I give Mayor Turner a lot of credit for pulling partners like you and everybody together. I just want to, this is a very difficult situation here, trying to make it fair. And I've said before you got here, and I'll say it again, it's important to me that my public safety as a native Houstonian, born and raised, and support both police and fire, is at a point where they can feel comfortable with a decent living wage. And however I have to do that and the positions I have to take to make that happen, I want to do that. You look at the fire department, they average in the academy about $2,400 a month, $2,400. And that's about $600 a week, $86 per day. Who lives on that in a profession that put their life on the line? And I take that very serious. With that being said, it's not the mayor's fault. He inherited this situation. I think he's done an outstanding job trying to balance the budget. He's an appropriator. He knows numbers. I get that. What I think we have to do as council members, at least this one here, look at creative ways to find money to make my fire and my police whole. When I look at other cities and what they're doing, Bob, pay parity, and while things may not be perfect, but at least they can take a paycheck home to their families and not have to be obligated to work 2 and 3 jobs. So this is my solution. One, the revenue cap is killing us. Okay, that's killing us. But since we can't get that, and I'm not putting you on the spot because I don't expect you to answer, but I, out of 16 council members, will single-handedly propose a tax increase for public safety only. I will campaign on it. I will put my seat up if that's an issue. I don't care. I'm going to do what's right. I will campaign on a public safety tax increase based on a $100,000 evaluation, which is roughly about $100,000 at 1%, and put that money towards police and fire and make them whole. Would the partnership support me?
Well, let me just say, council member.
And let me be clear, 1%. Yeah. Which is equivalent to about $1,000. And I think, and the reason I'm saying it, Bob, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Ellen Cohen asked the question, how are we going to pay for it? We can all talk about the problem, but as leaders, as board of directors, it's our job to try to be creative. We have a revenue cap. We have no money. So how are we going to pay for it? So Councilmember Boykins is saying and proposing a tax increase for public safety only, and I will campaign for it throughout this whole city and ask the voters who want public safety, excuse me, Councilman, real quick, they want 911 to respond in 5 minutes, and they want from police and fire. We got to pay for it. So how are we going to get there? Can the partnership help me with this? Well,
let me just say this. Of course, we did support the rev cap when it was originally put in place. We did support an amendment to the rev cap under Mayor White, which was directed at public safety. We have not taken a position with respect to any changes with respect to rev cap going forward. We have indicated to the administration that at any point that he wants to sit down and talk about such a modification to rev cap, we are prepared to sit down and talk, but we are not a priori going to say we'll support such a recommendation.
I asked for a tax increase, but I support that too.
So right. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Boykins. He forgot to reference Councilmember Cohen's other part of that was what can we cut? So before we start talking about tax increases, let's talk about enormous waste in various departments within the city of Houston that needs to be cut before we raise taxes. Councilmember Stardig.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here today, and I guess my question is, and I know the partnership, but for the public, there's a number of business organizations across the city. We've got the Hispanic Chamber, we got Houston West Chamber of Commerce. I mean, I can go down the list of all the different chambers and organizations. I know Greater Houston likes to take the lead on many of these instances. Who invited you here today? Because I want to make sure for the record, because I wanted to make sure if we were going to give an opportunity to the Greater Houston Partnership, then we should give the same opportunity to all the organizations. And this is not the first time I've brought this up. It's an advocacy for all business organizations and to be represented, not just big business that can afford to be a part of the membership.
I invited Mr. Harvey.
I'd like to ask the question to the gentleman if I can.
Well, interestingly, I would have probably said to that question that I reached out because my staff has reached out to Chairman Martin and indicated that I was prepared to come forward if we could work the time arrangements out. And frankly, I felt compelled to enter into this conversation today if given the opportunity, and I do appreciate this opportunity.
And I appreciate that. And again, did you go to have you had an opportunity to meet with your board to make sure that this is the position and that you've got a resolution of this position today?
No, thank you for clarifying that. I thought I referred to that. We have not taken a formal position. Yeah. Our committee structure will take this issue up, assuming that this is put on the ballot in November.
That this council body does it.
The council body does
Yes.
it. Then we will then take up the issue in committee and take it through our formal process.
Because this council is going to be the decision makers.
That's right.
So with that said, I mean, you had a valid point earlier that I wanted to clarify. You felt that based on your involvement thus far, that the way the petition reads, the City of Houston shall compensate city firefighters in a manner and amount that is at least equal and comparable by rank and seniority with the compensation provided city police officers, including, and it goes on. It doesn't limit it, it is including.
That's right.
So therefore, you believe the pension piece could go outside of the corridor, it could make an issue there. And would that be a negative or a positive for the firefighters, in your opinion? Is that a fair question?
Yes, it is. Any increase in compensation has an associated increase in benefit costs in a defined benefits plan, as you know. What's tricky about this situation is the way we constructed the corridor was to put limits, upper and lower limits, as a function of pay. So that not only does pay create a direct impact on benefits costs, it has the effect of actually moving that cap up and down.
Right.
So yes, I mean, could in effect the firefighters achieve a benefit relative to their pension outside of, not really, it's by affecting the
And they would
operation.
have to come, they would, by the changes, they would have to come back to negotiate that piece, or what was the change we made?
Well,
that you were highlighting?
Well, the corridor mechanism operates such that each year, if anything moves that pension costs as a percentage of payroll above or below those limits, then we're required to go back under a set of priorities to either reduce benefits or take other actions to move that cost back within those boundaries. But if you move the boundaries up, you've in effect provided an opportunity for greater costs, which would then be borne by the city and would be back to putting more pressure on the city budget.
And then again, coming back, it would trigger that action to bring it back within.
No, it really wasn't. But the problem is it would actually move those boundaries, those buffers up, so as not to force. It would actually create an additional cost.
So it would just do the additional cost.
That's right.
Okay, I want to make sure that I'm understanding. And then, I'm sorry,
Councilmember Starling,
I got
we'll
the bell.
put you back in queue.
We'll take
Councilmember Travis, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Harvey, thank you for being here. I always respect your opinions, and I'm glad you cleared up why you're here today, because I was also under the impression that the administration had reached out to you. But you are close to the administration, correct?
I try to stay close to all aspects of the city government, yes, Councilman.
Okay. Well, I think you are, and that's why something concerned me today in what you just said, and I'm going to read it verbatim because I wrote it down verbatim. And the reason for that is because yesterday there was some and I don't know how to put it, but there was some implication that we may not be putting this on the ballot in 2018, that we might be putting it on a different ballot. And I'm concerned about that because when you said today, you said, if it's placed on the ballot in November, we will study it further. So I'm wondering if you know something more than I know, because administration isn't telling me this, but I'm wanting to know, are we going to be placing it on the ballot in 18 like we're supposed to, or could there be an opportunity to place it on another ballot? And the reason that also concerns me is I don't want to lose Councilman Martin because he said he'll resign if it's not on 2018. So we got to make sure it's on 2018.
Thank you, Councilmember Trevor. Let me clarify.
As well as Councilmember Kubash.
My language was to reflect the fact that I'm not an attorney, frankly,
Okay.
and I don't know what does or does not compel the city to put something on the ballot on any particular date. I caught the tail end of that previous discussion, so I just wanted to make certain that in my testimony I didn't imply that I had some authoritative knowledge of when this would be placed.
But you're going to wait until after council votes to place it on the ballot to do your further study.
That is correct.
That's what you were stating.
That is correct.
Okay, and that makes sense. I think that's what Councilman Knox was talking about. All right, thank you very much.
Councilmember Kubash.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey, for being here. It's always good to see you. Are you saying that council members, based on all this information we're hearing, should not vote to put it on the ballot this November?
No, I am not making any statement with respect to whether the council could or should or is compelled to put this on the ballot.
Well, it's actually a ministerial duty. That doesn't mean we have to do it. When the red light camera petition came before City Council, it wasn't a unanimous vote. There was one person voting against it. So even though the city attorney said it's our ministerial duty, that we have to vote to put it on the ballot. So I was just curious if you I don't want citizens to believe that that we have the right not to vote to put it on the ballot, because we have to take that ministerial action, I understand, under state law. And I would hope that before this is over with, that our city attorney would return and make sure that we get to ask him questions. I would like to have that the statute that he quoted for our duties as a council member to do certain things under state law. I think that's very important that we follow the law on this matter. Thank you for coming. I always appreciate you promoting the city of Houston.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilmember. And before we go back to Councilmember Stardig, a quick comment. Other than Councilmember Stardig and Cohen, I've been sitting here longer than anyone. And the biggest complaint we always have as a body is lack of information. I'm surprised at this. I need more time. I need more information. I never hear of anyone say, man, I've gotten way too much information. So if your agenda is to do something a little bit different than what this committee and this chair is charged with, just let me know and I'll perfectly understand your position. But my role as BFA chair is to make sure we have more than enough decision to do this on August 8th and to look at it and make recommendations to the people who are asking me my position on pay parity. And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm a believer in more information is better than lack of information. Thus, we're sitting here today. And if we want to, and if my council members want to do this again after August 8th, and that ballot language is identified, more than happy to do that. But first of all, again, thank you for being here. I know, Bob, you have a very busy schedule, and you represent the business community for us, which makes a big impact on the city of Houston. Without you and your organization, we would not be anywhere near the city nor a body that we represent. So thanks again. Councilmember Stardig.
Thank you. And we will have another meeting, I'm sure. The question I have is, in business, we do an analysis. We want to make sure that turnover costs more money. It's cheaper to keep someone than it is to replace them. Is that true?
That's generally true, yes. That's right.
Generally, yes. Depending on the individual, of course, but overall. So why do you think that we haven't, since you've been involved in a lot of the conversations, maybe you have the benefit that I don't have, or maybe you could make the recommendation from the business community perspective that we would have an analysis of what the pays are out in the market. The chief testified that HR is working on it. Why wouldn't we know that on an ongoing basis because of the hiring situation daily in any of our departments? I think that would be something you'd want to know ongoing.
Well, the use of comparable data is, as you said, council members started, a standard practice in establishing appropriate compensation levels. It's not always easy to do on a fair and equitable and comparable
But it's
basis.
something. Due
But it's a
diligence,
standard
something.
analysis.
Yes.
It's just to be clear, so we're certainly not taking issue with any such process that is used by the city to set compensation or to negotiate compensation. Our issue is simply this idea that we would establish the pay levels in one department based on the pay levels in another department, which is quite distinct and different. Though there may be arguments for one to be paid more or less, and there may be arguments that the process for one is less.
I understand how this has evolved, and I understand the emotions, and I understand, a lot of things that are happening. But I think that, that without even having that homework done, that's the foundation of, another comparison. Chair, we talked about that I advised, I think you had left the meeting early yesterday if I had made the comment that we needed to have multiple lanes, choices and information, not steering only one lane, that we needed to have multiple lanes of information, choices. And one of the things that we should know going into this is knowing what the market is dictating for firefighters in other cities, so that we do know that we are compensating based on what other cities are doing. That's what everybody's criticizing right now, that we're comparing them to the police, but yet we don't have the data to compare to other cities. So which is it? So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Ellen Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bob, I just want to thank you as well as, for being here. And I'm not sure I've always been in sync with the Greater Houston Partnership. And largely that was before you took over. So I have to say that, because I have found you amazingly responsive. And we do think of the GHP as the business arm of what we're trying to do in this city. And yet you all have also taken, in my opinion, a difficult but correct decision when you all stepped out front in HERO, and as well as pensions. But, these are the things. My question to you is simply that if this goes through, if this is voted on the way it's stating right now, this affects our credit rating, does it not?
It would appear almost certainly to raise an expense that would impact the...
So, that seems to me the absolute issue as it affects the GHP. Because if our credit rating drops, we're looking at Detroit in their rearview mirror.
You know this system better than I do. You're compelled to bring forward a balanced budget. You'll be compelled, I believe, to find other places to reduce expense, whether it's within the fire department itself or across the city. So whether it ends up creating kind of a negative income outcome is probably debatable given the city charter. But every time we cut needed city services in some other part of the budget to accommodate some other part of the budget, that impacts the city as well. So whether it's our credit rating or it's our perception of whether we provide adequate city services, those are both issues that companies that are looking at Houston are asking anytime they make a decision to invest in Houston.
Thank you.
Yes, and just as a point of reference, if this does pass in November, on January 1, the Houston Fire Department expenses will go up from 503 budgeted item to almost $550 million, which is a huge increase. And to Councilmember Gallegos' points, and also Councilmember Boykins, the cuts are going to have to happen somewhere because we have no more revenue. We're in the middle of the fiscal year. So if it goes up 91 million, we have an additional 45 million of expenses. So what are we going to do? That's when we as a body are going to have to make those cut decisions. Do we shut down our BARC's office? Do we do some things differently? Does Chief Pena make some adjustments to 91% of his budget, which is payroll? We'll see. Councilmember Boykins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those are good points. But before I make my statement, I want to clear some. Channel 13 just put a tweet out, Maya Shea, stating that Councilmember Boykins, which I did, half of the story, proposed a tax increase to pay for Houston fire pay raises. That is not what I said, Maya Shea. If you were in here, I said public safety, and I'll say it again. No, it ain't fake. I won't go there.
Councilmember Boykins, did she misquote me as well? If so, I'd like you to point that out. All right, thank you. All right.
Coming from her, you better check. But let me just say with that made me forget my point. Councilman Martin, you said something that I wanted to comment on that I truly respect how you handling. What was your comment just a minute ago?
Services.
Oh, cutting the services.
Yeah.
Let me just say this, Mr. Chairman. I truly believe this, and again, this is just my take. Let's think of a worst case scenario. For an example, like the president tariffs, the impact it's having on us now. It was good one day on the economy, now it's hitting us. And you being the chairman of the partnership, we need to be ready for that, Mr. Harvey. And I know you are aware of the impact it's having on automobiles and everything else, and the deficit is killing us. So it's going to have an impact, so people are going to have to cut. So as a visionary leader, I'm thinking from this perspective. If we take a bold step, whatever that may be, to try to address this, what Councilmember and Chairman Martin talking about in January, it's going to be an impact with the same budget. So residents, and I'm going to talk about the people now in District D, residents who get trash picked up once every other week, police code 1, which is life or death, 1 hour, fire, emergency, 1 hour and a half. They're going to rewind back to where were your council members making decisions 6 months ago. Because that's what's going to happen. If it passes in November, which I hope it does, January we don't have the money because we're staying within this so-called conservative budget. What happens to services? Then it comes back to us, not the members of Congress, Bob, not the state legislature, the city folk who handle and deal with problems and issues every single day. What happens? So we can't rewind that clock. So that's why I would stand up for a 1% tax increase to address this, put some bonds on, bond this thing out, if we can, where we have cash going into January to make certain that we're ready to take this on, because it is, I'm not going to allow, we talk about public safety. Solid Waste has raggedy trucks. I went out there one night to take a load of trash that I picked up in my district to one of the centers, and he couldn't even crank the truck up. He went through 3 trucks trying to crank them up to move it up to take it off the back of my truck. The point I'm making is we're in bad shape with this revenue cap. We need more money. That's why I don't mind proposing additional revenue to come in the city, Bob. So that's where I am. And I'm just telling you, we got some serious challenges facing us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Member. And just a quick aside, Council Member started to your questions. While we don't have a parallel between fire departments in one city to another, we do have the position requirements in the appendix. And if you'll read that, you'll notice a lot of the positions really don't have a parallel. So, and there's a lot of different requirements to go for advancement opportunities. For instance, there is a fire department promotion that requires 2 years on the job. And the parallel that is drawn within the petition language on the police side is you have to be working for 12 years. So I don't understand that part of parity as well, and that was drafted by the Houston Fire Department, not by me or anybody else. But the parallels, as you stated, are all over the place. I mean, yeah, we'd all like to have pay parity in the world, but your organization represents a lot of business. I don't think there is any organization that demands pay parity from another organization in the city of Houston that's on the commercial side, not on the city side. So I find this whole argument interesting. Mr. Harvey, thanks again for coming today. No other council members are in queue. We appreciate your time. We know you have a busy schedule, and we appreciate you coming over here. Thank you very much.
Chairman, thank you, council members. Thanks.
And if we could have Chief and Director Emo